So, one of the biggest talking points this season so far at least has been Racing Point's 2020 car, looking suspiciously like last year's championship winner from Mercedes. Funnily enough, this and the team's sudden rise up the grid has caused quite the stir amongst the other midfield outfits, most notably Renault and their team boss Cyril Abitbol. Renault and Abitbol are claiming that this goes against the DNA of the sport, but the question is, does he, for once at least, have a point, or is this a bit bullshit? I'm sorry, that was actually awful. Wow. Hey there guys, and welcome to FP1, and since this talk of customer cars and copycat cars appears to show no sign of going away, I thought I'd give my 2 cents since apparently 1,400 of you seem to care about that. There are many reasons for and against teams copying others, so I thought it might be good to make a video on it just to go over both sides of the argument before giving my own opinion on the matter. When I asked you guys about this over on Twitter, the results were, well, interesting, I think is the best way to put it. You know, there were some for, some against, there were some that were completely unrelated and didn't have anything to do with customer cars, but let me know down in the comments below what you do think on this topic, and we'll try and get a debate going down there as well. And of course, while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. But yeah, with my typical shameless plug out of the way, let's get into things. So to start with, let's go back to testing in February and Racing Point revealing their brand new RP20 chassis. Well, as I say brand new, they released a year-old Mercedes chassis with a bit of pink paint slapped over the top of it. And when these new pink Mercedes cars started lapping within a tenth of the actual Mercedes cars, a fair few heads began to turn. Placement in the Constructors' Championship is incredibly key at the end of the season, where sometimes a few extra points here and there can mean gaining or losing millions of pounds that you can invest in next year's car. And with a brand new set of technical regulations coming in 2022, funds are even more pivotal when it comes to making a flying start in a couple of years' time. So when Racing Point pulled the masterstroke that is the RP20 and saved money while still producing an incredibly competitive car, perhaps it was understandable that a few members of the paddock may be slightly displeased with it all. But the problem for the rest of the grid was, well, Racing Point hadn't actually done anything wrong. Well, apart from the brake ducts, but that's a whole other video. There is nothing in the regulations to say you can't copy another car's design. In fact, we've seen it in F1 for years now. Take Red Bull's current side pod designs and their side pod intakes. They were first pioneered by Ferrari a few years back, but have now been copied and developed by other teams. Or you've got the 2009 double diffuser or the 2010 F-duct. All of these are examples of technical innovations that were picked up and just copied by the teams to gain that extra performance. Racing Point have just taken this a step further and copied the entire 2019 Mercedes car, which has now been made possible by the advancements in modern photography. Now, to be clear, you can't just steal another team's CAD files and drawings and get away with it, but that's not what's happened here at all. Racing Point have still built those CAD models, they've still produced those official drawings all in-house. Those documents are theirs, and although look identical to the 2019 Mercedes ones, they were produced by Racing Point engineers. And if you think about it, it's an incredibly clever trick, and it's surprising this is the first time it's happened and worked so well. But there are negatives, and we'll get to those a little later. But really, this is why I think there's so much dislike for this car right now. While the other teams have been pumping vast amounts of money into designing new concepts, Racing Point or Tracing Point or Pink Mercedes, whatever you want to call them at this point, have saved all this cash, and they can now direct that extra cash they've saved towards the development for 2022. The big argument here, and the one I touched on earlier, is that people think this goes against the DNA of F1, where the best engineers in the world would compete to produce the fastest cars, and when teams copy each other's, it kind of goes against what the sport traditionally is or traditionally was. Additionally, another one of the byproducts of this sport is the technical innovations that eventually find themselves feeding down into the road cars. You know, it's one of the biggest reasons we see manufacturers like McLaren or Ferrari here in the first place. And if less teams are trying to push those boundaries and instead just copying the fastest cars, would an almost spec series still be an appealing option for these teams, especially given the difficult financial situation a lot of companies have currently find themselves in? Now, although I get that, and I fully understand those points, I think it's still important to realise that, you know, the world of Formula 1 is currently changing in a very, very big way. Team spending is being cut by the cost cap, you've got more teams looking set to join the grid in the next 5 years, and Mahavir Raghunathan is in the process of planning his total domination of motorsport and the world. Alright, fine, maybe not that last one, but I want to focus on those new teams entering for a second. Back in 2010, we saw the possibility of 5 new teams entering the sport. In reality, only 3 of them actually made it to the grid, and all 3 of those were utterly incapable of doing anything but get in the way and be mobile chicanes. Allowing new teams to copy other cars or even go one step further and purchase a full-on customer chassis could help avoid a repeat of that 2010 season. And in addition, it can help prevent what we saw with Lotus, Virgin and HRT, as all three of those teams would eventually drop out the sport as their troubles continued. I mean, even looking at established teams such as McLaren and Williams, both of which we've seen go through big financial uncertainty this year, given the current situation we're in. And I get there's that argument that the engineers should design their own concepts. Trust me, look, I'm an engineer myself, but that's probably why I'm single alone actually right now. But, I'd rather see a fantastic, closely matched field fighting out for the top spot every Sunday rather than what we have now, which is just a dwindling field with a massive divide really between the top teams and, well, everyone else. And another thing, and it's a point that hasn't really been stressed enough, and that's that there are some big drawbacks to copying last year's championship winner. Generally, teams will design and build a car at the start of the season. They then develop it over the course of that season and get all the performance they can out of it. Now, when you run a race team in this way, you get a pretty good understanding of why the car is quick or not. Well, unless you're Pass anyway. Also, every car will hit almost a plateau of sorts, where the team can't get any more performance out of a certain design philosophy. This is why we see cases like Renault this year, where they've started going in an all new direction with their car design in order to continue finding pace. I think the problem Racing Point are going to have this year and next year as well is that since they've started with the car that has already been developed a lot over 2019, they're going to hit that plateau in performance much quicker than a lot of the other teams. And add this to the fact that since they didn't design the car from scratch, they're less likely to have a good understanding of its characteristics. And all this makes upgrading the RP20 so much more difficult in comparison to everyone else on the grid. And when you look at their main competitor for second in the championship, you've got Red Bull, who have a history of finding a lot of performance at the end of a season. So don't be surprised to see that team fall away over this and next year as well. Remember in that long break that we had due to a certain worldwide event that I can't mention if I want to keep monetization, it was decided that the majority of car design would be frozen between 2020 and 2021, making this problem even worse for Racing Point, or Aston Martin as they'll be known by then. Effectively what's happened here is Racing Point are that kid in school that asks to copy your homework every single day, then they get to the exam at the end of the year and realise they're completely fucked. So basically what I'm trying to say here is, perhaps copycat cars could go against what the sport used to be like 10 or 15 years ago, but if they are a viable option that also has drawbacks, that stops a team completely dominating, you know what, maybe it's necessary if we want to keep some teams on the grid. As I said, look, I'm an engineer and I love the high pressure environment and the quick turnaround times of F1 era development, but at the same time, I'm also a lifelong F1 fan at the end of the day. I want to see the best drivers in the world race each other closely and put on a show. And if that means we have to have teams taking influence off other designs, that's a necessary evil I'll happily take. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. Now I'm really interested to hear yours on this one. So I feel this could be quite a dividing topic. So let me know what you think down in the comments below and I'll join in on the debate as well. Thanks again for all the amazing support recently. And if you did enjoy the video, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing it around, since as a small creator it can be quite difficult to get content out there for everyone to see. But anyway, I will see you guys later in the week with another video. But until then, have a good one.